Jackson smirked and added, "If you can't even make a sales pitch, you're useless." Brown threw away my belongings, which were in a cardboard box. "Here, I've packed your things for you." Was it his fault I had an empty desk? I twisted my expression in annoyance. Jackson walked up to me at the party and grinned. "Hey, it's been a while. I've been informed of your accomplishments at Day Corporation. I had no idea you were employed by such a famous organization." His praise was slightly envious. "Thanks, but I'll be going now." Brown was standing next to me, holding my arm. "We're willing to have you back at our organization, according to Manager Jackson. Let's get along as we did in the past." We were never friends. You were the ones who said, "If you can't even make a sales pitch, you're useless," I remarked, casting a chilly glance at them. "Give up. Or is it that you now require the assistance of a worthless person?" Jackson's expression twisted. It appears that the rumors about O-Corp's malfunctioning system were accurate. I'm 52-year-old Sam Johns. I work for a real estate company that sells pre-built houses in the sales department. I manage data entry into the real estate and customer information systems, so I'm not actually in sales. Basically, I work in the background. To tell the truth, I used to have sales experience. It was common procedure for everyone new to the organization to be allocated to the sales department upon graduation. It wasn't a burden to stroll the country from dawn to dusk, looking for potential places to build. Making customer rounds, though, was something I couldn't manage. I stammer, and when I'm anxious among clients, it's really noticeable. I felt hopeless and tried a lot of different things, like taking speech classes, but I was unable to get over it. But at the time, my manager appreciated my work and believed I could succeed in the background, away from clients. He therefore made room in the systems for me. I put in a lot of work and was able to make a specific contribution to the company in an attempt to return my boss's generosity. But looking back, my bad luck started with the hiring of a new boss who doesn't even recognize my efforts. Again, John's slacking off? You won't get paid to just stare at a screen. The screaming from above startled me so much that I almost dropped the notepad I was clutching. I'm looking for redundant customer information. I'm not taking it easy. Jackson, though, just became angrier. "What? To whom do you think you're speaking in that manner?" Next to the menacing Jackson, my coworker Brown gloated. "We're out here talking to clients and making money, not like you are. Working with machines that don't require communication must be nice." I am so frustrated with Brown's condescending attitude all the time. I wish he would just go away, even if we are the same age. I would want to complete this data check. This is what I was thinking about today when Smith, my subordinate, came up to me. "Mr. Johns, the supervisor would like to talk to you." He brought up the freshly completed properties we sold all at once. Feeling relieved by the sudden help, I rose from my chair. "I'll be right there. Thanks, Smith." In the background, I could hear Jackson clicking his tongue. "Behaving haughty just because you're the boss's preferred candidate? One day, I'll put you in your proper position." I understood that the fact that the boss depended on me so much annoyed Jackson and Brown. I never thought he would take such extreme steps. Jackson was exceptionally happy that day. He always appeared out of nowhere at my desk, but what he asked me next took me by surprise. He recommended that I go on a paid vacation. I tried to decline, feeling awful about it, but Jackson gave me a shoulder clap and forcefully convinced me otherwise. In actuality, the sales department's low vacation uptake rate has started to cause problems. I guess it's inevitable that everyone, including myself, loves their work too much. However, it appears that the stiff people at HR are unaware of that. He's basically urging us to take a break because he doesn't want HR to hold him accountable. I was disgusted to learn that Jackson's work over rest policy is the reason for the poor vacation uptake rate in the sales department. Nonetheless, he genuinely thinks that his employees enjoy what they do. Even though I could take the leave since I had accrued it, I didn't want to follow Jackson's instructions. I was going to say no strongly when Brown, who never stops, interjected. If you, as a supervisor, don't take leave, it makes it hard for your subordinates to take theirs, doesn't it? Brown looked at Smith as he worked at his desk before continuing. Since Smith has been under me, he too has been working without much break. Possibly detecting my shift in opinion, Brown added with a cunning smile. Yes, the president and the executives won't be phoning you out of the blue as usual because they are currently on an inspection trip abroad. This is a great opportunity to use up some paid leave because they won't be returning until the end of the month. The president has frequently abruptly asked me to produce statistics and documentation for meetings. Since I'm the only one capable of doing this, I shouldn't be given any urgent assignments while the executives are away. I reasoned that Smith could handle the daily tasks. That idea made me decide to take a week off, just like Jackson and the others had advised. What kind of mess is this, and how are you going to take responsibility for it? That was Jackson's reprimand to me when I got back from my vacation. He seemed strangely delighted, but his mouth was relaxed even as he yelled. Smith read to me, confused and fixed to the spot. At last, you're back. I tried phoning you numerous times, but was unable to connect, leaving me unsure of what to do. I was curious as to what he meant when he said he couldn't connect. It was Brown who gave me a polite explanation of the circumstances. It appears that a virus in the data you were managing caused the system to crash. Why would you want to spend your entire life tied to a computer? You weren't just pretending to work and slacking off, right? The system failed. Smith explained the details in a quiet manner, and I became pale. It appears that the system abruptly crashed 2 days ago, preventing us from accessing the detailed schedules or the designs for the houses that are now under construction. The sales department had to reschedule client visits and postpone deadlines in order to survive the pandemonium. Smith tried to get in touch with me first, understanding he was in over his head, but for some reason, his calls and emails were not answered. That is absurd. My phone was with me the entire time, yet it didn't ring once or send me an email. I was confused when Jackson yelled at me. We finally got a contractor to sort the system out, but hey Johns, how are you going to take responsibility for this? Brown glanced meaningfully at Smith with a small smile on his face. Holding operations is a serious crime. Well, perhaps you will have to assume responsibility if you refuse to. I recognize now that I had been duped. They must be to blame for the unexpected vacation and the virus that infected the system while I was away. That Smith was unable to get through to me was most likely due to Brown's intervention. I exclusively use the cell phone provided by the firm, and I always leave it connected into the charger at my desk because I don't go outside. It would be simple to hack my phone and prevent any calls or messages from the business or Smith when I'm not looking. However, I also understood that if I didn't comply, they would assign Smith the blame. Smith lacks verbal skills, just like me, but his data analysis skills are why I choose him to be my subordinate. I did only what my former boss did for me, but Smith is very grateful that I did. If it came to it, he would probably even leave the company on my behalf. I hate to put myself in Jackson's shoes, but I have to keep Smith safe at any costs. I gritted my teeth and sent Jackson a scowl. Do I really seem that bad to you? I too am a part of the sales staff. But Jackson gave me a really stern response. You're worthless if you can't deliver a sales pitch. Give up. Jackson grinned. While the president and executives are abroad, it appears that he wants to fire me. Brown hurled my personal effects, which were enclosed in a cardboard box, towards me. Here, I've packed up your stuff. Was that why there was nothing on my desk? He was quite efficient. I furrowed my brow in dismay. Smith gave Brown a look of amazement and protested. What are you doing, Brown? This system might not even work correctly without Johns. However, Smith's remarks were not taken seriously by Jackson or Brown. Whoa, you're defending your boss. That really is the spirit. However, in an organization, accountability for errors must be assumed by someone. Smith was going to strike back, but I stopped him and shook my head. Don't worry, Smith. All they dislike about me is that. But Mr. Jones, Smith appeared hopeless, but I was at a loss for what to do. I slouched and walked out of the office with a cardboard box in tow. My resignation was accepted right away. I made the decision to go for a cool getaway without a job in mind, believing that a soak in a hot spring would help me decompress. In the end, I had a surprise encounter. That's right, Mr. Johns. How ironic. It was White, the head of an interior design company that had once been a client. President White. It's unexpected to run into you here of all places. At the inn, White appeared even more stunning than usual in her yukata. White confided in me, winking playfully with one eye. Actually, our company will be handling the renovation of this inn, and I wanted to check its original condition before we start. That clarified her reason for remaining here. Meetings with her company were something I used to attend as a sales team member. Because of experiences like these, her company's interior designs are usually inventive with a touch of nostalgia. I spoke it honestly and frankly, and I really appreciated that. President, you are great. That has to be the reason for your business's success. But my compliments appeared to distort her face. Panicked, thinking I had said something inappropriate, White simply smiled mischievously and asked me to dinner. Mr. Johns, would you mind discussing something over dinner at the restaurant? White expressed her worry that there might be a difference between what her company suggests for interior designs and what the clients truly want. We show the clients several plans, and they choose the one they like best, but somehow their satisfaction isn't very high afterward. You do gather the client's requests before presenting the plans, right? I asked White, following a gut feeling. White gave a firm nod. Of course, we gather responses from a preliminary survey and use them to develop the plans, White said. That strategy is probably the root of the problem, I said. What do you mean? White inquired, appearing taken aback. I gave White a comforting grin. Actually, the company I used to work for encountered a similar problem. My allusion to my former company seemed to take her by surprise, but I went on. Buying a home is a lifetime decision, and the company wants the customers to be satisfied, so they ask all these detailed preferences beforehand. That makes sense, White said with a profound nod. I replied with a nod. However, even if we tried to sell homes that matched the client's wishes, we often faced cancellations at the last minute. Sellers in any business find cancellations to be difficult circumstances. The money and energy invested in marketing would be in vain. I was determined to reduce the cancellation rate and finally figured out why the cancellations were happening. Are you serious? That is quite remarkable. It appears that White is aware of how challenging it is to lower cancellation rates. I gave her a quick explanation after clearing my throat. Customers always own a place of residence, either a family home or a rental, prior to purchasing a spec home. I concentrated on their initial living situation. Generally speaking, people like to stay in their comfortable environments. People from warmer climates may dream about snow, but wouldn't choose to live in it, while people from places with lots of wildlife typically desire to live close to parks with trees. In essence, the majority of people desire just minor improvements to their existing surroundings. I understand. So it's like how nice it is to vacation in a suite, but it's difficult to picture yourself living in one? It is evident from her quick understanding that she is intelligent. I gave a nod and carried on. That's right. Customers who realized that their current apartments or houses served as the foundation for this image frequently cited their inability to imagine living there as the cause for their last-minute cancellations. I did extensive research on the living conditions of my clientele. I took common elements and combined them with spec houses that met these requirements. Despite the time-consuming nature of doing this by hand, I made the decision to develop an algorithm that could quickly locate the ideal spec home for a client. I never imagined that my college coursework in statistics and data processing would be useful in this manner. Our spec homes had a much higher closing rate when this method was incorporated into the current setup. Before, we considered ourselves successful if we could sell 100 spec homes a year for $500,000 apiece. But because of the algorithm, we now sell more than 1,000 houses annually. The president has instructed me to patent it because he is so happy about the success. Given that the algorithm generates over $500 million in revenue annually, protecting it makes sense. WHI filled with admiration as I concluded my explanation. Wow, that is amazing. Mr. Johns, your patent is what caused O Corp's performance to suddenly soar. All I could do was laugh and reply. White scowled after that. In fact, I'd assumed it was because of some exceptionally talented salesman. That's the kind of person I've been trying to snag. Redlining? I cocked my head to ask. White clarified. One of our problems has been the lack of talented salespeople, but it wasn't about sales skills, but your contribution. I humbly scratched my head, flattered by the compliment. White chuckled, but her face quickly became serious. You brought up your previous employer earlier. What transpired after achieving so much, including getting a patent? Her sincere concern moved me, and I felt obliged to tell her everything. White listened in disbelief as I explained how Jackson and Brown's machinations had driven me out. Absurd. Were they too responsible for the system failure? And yet, Mr. Johns, why did you have to step down? It appeared as though my subordinates would be held accountable. Therefore, I was forced to step down. Furthermore, it's likely that all traces of the system's breakdown have already been removed. I said, there was nothing I could do. But White, having listened, quickly grabbed my hand. President, what is the issue? Startled, I asked. White stated, if O Corp says they don't need you, then I want you, with a resolute expression. Do you think about working for my company? I was dumbfounded by this simple offer and didn't know what to do. Her sincerity convinced me, and I accepted to work with White. At White's suggestion, I joined Day Corporation and began problem-solving right away. But since I had given O Corp the rights to use the copyrighted algorithm, and employing it would have put Day Corp and me in danger, I didn't use it. However, there was no issue when using the algorithm's fundamental concept. In order to find common causes once more, I carefully examined the customer data and listened to every employee. It came out to be a matter of hue. Customers' primary point of reference, while redesigning their interiors, seems to be the hue of the houses or apartments they were raised in or were used to. Following this revelation, I suggested to White at Day Corporation that we try our hand at incorporating the color schemes from our clients' past residences into our design concepts. My recommendation was brought up at a meeting and was accepted by all. It appears that White had been ecstatically distributing news of my $500 million patent accomplishment across the organization. Her preparation ensured that no one questioned my competence and that a proposition was carried out. To be honest, I wasn't sure if it would work, but after 3 months, it was evident that my efforts had been worthwhile. Unexpectedly, customer satisfaction surged. Plans were being approved by clients all at once, and no complaints were raised even after they were finished. There was a festive atmosphere in the company. Anyone who had to keep rewriting plans for clients only to have them canceled because they weren't what they had in mind would understandably become discouraged. Now that these cancellations had all but disappeared, staff morale had skyrocketed. White was ecstatic to see Day Corporation's sales increase threefold from the prior year. Mr. Johns, there isn't a better way to thank you than this. The Vice President post is open right now. Kindly accept it. Vice President? The offer made my eyes widen, and White laughed a charming little laugh. Unlike O Corp, our company will not throw away a golden goose. Making sure you feel at ease and have the opportunity to flourish here is what we know is best. It might be a bit much to be labeled a golden goose, but it's not too horrible to be maintained by a president who is so attractive. I must have been giving in to her manipulation by thinking in this way. I took on the role of vice president and made a commitment to supporting White and the company's expansion. In the meantime, O Corp, my old employer, was in disarray. After I was promoted to vice president, White and I would frequently go to industry parties together. In fact, she would pull me along to every event because we were Day Corporation employees. You must be recognized by all. With a deep laugh, White remarked, "We can't let other companies steal a man who came up with a $500 million idea. And we can't let other women flirt with you. I'll be right by your side, so don't worry." She comforted me, saying, "Just enjoy the party like you're on a big, safe ship." My blood pressure might shoot through the roof simply being around this gorgeous woman, but the president had given me the order, so I had to comply. As a result, I started going to professional conferences and parties practically every week. I wasn't very good at making small conversation, but I also wasn't very good at sales pitches. After I got used to the party environment, I made friends and enjoyed having talks. That day, I was talking with an executive client of mine about current trends in the sector, having parted company with White. With the intention of getting a snack, I made my way to the buffet. But I turned back when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I was contacted during the park party by none other than Jackson, my old boss. Jackson, who had been so conceited, was grinning now. "Hey, it's been a while. I've been informed about your achievements at Day Corporation. I had no idea you were employed by such a prominent organization." His praise was laced with jealousy. Jackson was undoubtedly annoyed to see me standing next to the fashionable wife, since he knew how much he liked ladies. But I had had enough of his small-minded jealousy. "Thanks, but I have to go right now." Beside me, Brown was the one who took hold of my arm. He faked a crooked smile, ignoring my annoyance. "Manager Jackson says he would be open to having you return to our organization. Let's reunite harmoniously as before. Our relationship was never harmonious. Weren't you the ones who said you're useless if you can't even make a sales pitch?" I asked them, casting a chilly glance in their direction. "Give up? Or do you now require the assistance of a worthless person?" Jackson's expression instantly twisted. It appears that the reports of ORP's system collapse were accurate. Even though the rumor had gained traction, I was already aware of it prior to its public release thanks to Smith, my former subordinate. Contrary to what Jackson and Brown believed, I did not receive special treatment from the president because I was granted a patent. The president wouldn't regularly ask for my input if it were. He was really intrigued by my plans to advance the algorithm. For the algorithm to have any significance, it had to change with the system. The first real estate system needed to be updated every few months, despite having the capacity to handle enormous volumes of data and process it all at once. At that company, it was my responsibility to adjust the algorithm so that it matched those revisions. Sadly, Smith was unable to adapt to those changes. In addition, Smith was upset with Jackson and Brown for ejecting me. Without a doubt, he would not agree to assume responsibility for making those changes. Consequently, disparities between the algorithm and the system increased until the system finally failed. "How much do you know? Damn it." After Smith gave up, Jackson continued, "Well, everyone is struggling because the system you worked on isn't functioning, but no one understands the patented technology," Brown remarked. "Thus, please cooperate with us as we make some minor fixes." Brown begged, "Manager Jackson is having a hard time because he's being blamed for letting you go." I simply gave Brown a sneer. "You really wanted me gone enough to lay a trap, don't you? You did. After all, get your wish. Now handle it on your own." Jackson went from being obedient to enraged in an instant. "Don't mess with me, a person who can't even manage sales effectively. You're worthless as is. Simply keep quiet and follow instructions." I retaliated angrily at Jackson's ignorance. You're not serious. Permit me to guess. You were also responsible for the virus incident. You damaged the firm to set me up and make me leave. And now you're even bold enough to seek for my assistance. That is excessive. Jackson attempted to drive me away with force, but he didn't give up. Brown pushed me from behind, joining in. They were trying to get me to leave the venue so the three of us could talk in private. I'm going to lose my job if I don't fix the system. Come on, we've been coworkers for a very long time. Please help me just once, Brown begged. Brown was a great colleague who never did anything but hold me back. I don't have the compassion to support someone who has just made me feel worse. A loud roar that sounded like a scream came from behind me as I was ready to shrug off the two of them. What actions are you taking toward our esteemed vice president? Are you attempting to abduct him in some way? Security, take action against these individuals. When Jackson and Brown saw the security guards running over, they paled and swiftly released me. White moved ahead of me, giving the two men a fierce look. A stunning woman's look had double the power, and even the brash pair were surprised. No, President White, you are incorrect. There is a miscommunication. We were just catching up like old friends, Jackson begged. Yes, it is correct. All I wanted to do was speak with Johns outside. It's not at all like being kidnapped, he continued. However, White spoke even louder, probably with the intention of making everyone at the gathering aware of her presence. Are you serious now? I am fully aware of your attempts to frame and fire Mr. Johns. With a worker you fired, what are your goals? Surely, you're not considering hiring him to fix the allegedly problematic system at your company. Now, Mr. Johns plays a significant role in our business. Keep your hands off him, please. As she spoke, White tugged my arm toward her and entwined it with hers, grabbing everyone's attention. Subsequently, the focus switched to Jackson and Brown, who appeared to be shrinking under the stern looks. That's not how it works. All we wanted was for him to look over our corporate system. He is the most knowledgeable about it. Just a little glance, and it would be sufficient if he could identify the cause. Brown also fawned over her, as if sensing Jackson's intention to placate White rather than me. Yes, precisely. Jayan abruptly quit, and we haven't been able to resolve the internal system issues. Smith's takeover didn't go smoothly, and we're now informed he has no more options. Our only hope is with Johns. However, White dismissed their entreaties with a sneer. Sudden resignation. You seem to be implying that Mr. Johns left on his own. But is that really the case? I am aware of what you two did to push him away out of jealousy. When Jackson and Brown saw the stunning beauty, they became pale. Taken off by car. No, it's not like that. Johns, refute that for them. Yes, it is correct. Did you quit in order to accept accountability for the error? Inform President White of that. When I saw their beseeching expressions, I shrugged. Have you already forgotten? You advised me to resign since I am incompetent. Do you think you've lost your memory? The atmosphere around Jackson and Brown grew even more chilly, and it appeared that the observers agreed with me. White sprung to attention as he saw them falter. We will formally object to your firm president's attempt to oust John, our vice president, by force. Be ready for that. The term vice president suddenly became audible. A vice president, Jackson? Not at all. He joined 3 months ago, from what I've heard, and he's already climbed that high. That isn't feasible. Brown, my colleague, was astounded to see that I had been given a promotion as he stood there. Jackson and Brown were stunned by White's scathing remarks and my elevation. They crept out of the celebration. Later, White revealed all that Jackson and Brown had done to President Williams when we stood up together to protest at O Corporation. You're suggesting that Mr. Johns was sacked because they blamed him for the virus intrusion. It's unbelievable that workers in our organization would act in such a manner. Furthermore, that would just make things worse for the sales team members themselves, the confused president remarked. I made the decision to counsel him. Please review the system logs if you believe there is deception. When the virus was planted, they ought to display who was able to access the system. I'm going to assume it was Brown. It's a common misconception among those who are unfamiliar with computers that machines remember everything, unlike people. Brown, who hadn't given the logs a second consideration, had unsurprisingly left his accessed history in the system. Smith, who appeared happy to see me, was the one who delivered these records to the president. When he heard the proof, Brown became pale. I wasn't to blame. Everything was carried out as directed by Manager Jackson. He blurted out, betraying Jackson. They say villains don't stay friends for long. You betrayer. You betray me in this way after everything I've done for you. Jackson became enraged. Manager Jackson was the one who declared it would never be discovered. I'm not at fault. President Williams appeared to be about to have a blood pressure attack in front of everyone as he saw this shameful discussion. Will you stop talking, you moron? What do you mean to frame someone by infecting our crucial company system with a virus? He yelled. Sweat-soaked, Jackson and Brown cast shameful glances down. I added, Mr. President, I sincerely apologize for the trouble you have to deal with these employees, but you have to pay for their false accusations against Mr. Johns. With a look of shock on his face, the two fighting guys looked at me when White interrupted them incredulously. I apologize to you, Johns. The fact that the president acknowledged you despite the fact that you don't work in sales just annoyed me. I vented to you about it. With a bend of his head, Jackson prayed for forgiveness. When Brown noticed this, he quickly bowed too and said, Even though I was your colleague, I felt like I was overshadowed because you got a patent and shone so brightly. I need you since I've never advanced and I'm constantly out on sales. Please pardon me. Their apology did not, however, change my opinion. They obviously believed they could make things right and avoid the repercussions. The president will decide how to punish you, but whatever you decide will have an impact on our company's business with Day Corporation, I suggested. After giving the two a severe look, President Williams declared emphatically, keeping such people in the company would only lead to more victims like John's. I'm not going to let that happen. As of right now, you two are both dismissed. I felt lighter as I left the old firm with White, watching in silence as Jackson and Brown fell. Following that, Jackson and Brown were sued in addition to being fired. This was due to the fact that purposely introducing a virus into the system was considered sabotage. Their demise may have been sealed when Smith discovered a USB at Brown's workstation that still had the infection on it. They didn't even dispose of the evidence, Smith scoffed. What idiots. Williams often invited me back, but I declined to stay at my previous employer. In addition to Jackson and Brown, a lot of people disapproved of me for choosing to spend my days in front of a computer instead working in a chilly office. Even though Day Corporation is a smaller company, working there is unquestionably 100 times better since everyone values my thoughts. It's a pleasure to have met you, Mr. Johns. My good fortune was at that motel. Do you think we should visit that location once more sometime? What does together signify in her context? Despite the fact that our lovely president often acts ambiguously and with unclear motives, I nevertheless look forward to going to work every day.